sang these psalms when they went up to the temple. And the clear intention, they may not have been written that way, but they were organized at a certain point so that people would listen to, would sing them as they went up to the temple. So that's what's so powerful about that. Yeah, we're on. So that's what we're going to hear today. We're going to continue with these songs of ascent. And this one, interestingly, not only says it's a song of ascent, but it says it's a song of Solomon, which again was probably affixed to it later on. But Psalm 127 definitely has a real intent of this is about the temple. And so whether or not these psalms were originally collected for that purpose, I don't think they were, but eventually they were put together, and so that pilgrims could sing these psalms, or they could be sung to them as they came into the temple. There's definitely themes of going to Jerusalem or being in Jerusalem, but also walking, as you're going to see some of these psalms today. So we're going to finish the Psalms of Ascent. We read a couple of weeks ago. We started, which I said had some really famous ones, like Psalm 126. But today we're going to get to one of the most famous psalms, at least one of the most recorded in the Jewish community, one that we know real well. So Rosemary, if you'd be so kind as to take us through Psalm 127.
Unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor in vain on it. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman keeps vigil in vain. In vain do you rise early and stay up late, you who toil for the bread you eat. He provides as much for his loved ones while they sleep. Sons are the provision of the Lord, the fruit of the womb, his reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are sons born to a man in his youth. Happy is the man who fills his quiver with them. They shall not be put to shame when they contend with the enemy in the gate.
So,
yeah.
Yes, there definitely seems to be a theme of this, which is, having children, which maybe is one of the reasons why this is a Psalm of Solomon too, that he had a lot of kids, had a lot of wives and a lot of kids. But there definitely seems to be this idea that that children are blessings from God, which they sometimes feel like, sometimes not, but sometimes they feel like blessings. And again, there's definitely a feeling. Well, here it specifically says sons. There definitely seems to be an idea that these are kind of like the people that will continue on for the king. But again, this psalm, a fairly short psalm. You're going to see interesting things. Like some of the psalms will be really short. Like we've got one here that's got 3 verses, but some of them are kind of like, normal 20 verses, 18 to 20 verses. But this one, interestingly, is not one that we use for a lot of. It's not used for a lot, though. This line is kind of a famous line in Jewish thought, which is, unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor in vain, which again reminds us that, we've got to bring God into our construction, if you will. It's not obviously understood not just to be houses, but definitely when we're building a sanctuary or we're building something holy, people would oftentimes kind of use this as a reminder that the places that they build, they have to be partners with God on the construction, if you will. Any comments or questions or anything that anybody sees here? Again, this was not one that's used a lot in prayer. All the Psalms of Ascent are, and as I said, these were by the Talmudic period were understood to be, had been organized for that.
What's the note on the provision?
Let's see. Just the word nachala can sometimes, nachala is oftentimes used as a heritage or as a inheritance, if you will. So not a huge one. All right. Well, let's look at Psalm 128 then.
Happy are all who fear the Lord, who follow his ways. You shall enjoy the fruit of your labors. You shall be happy, and you shall prosper. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, your sons like olive saplings around your table. So shall the man who fears the Lord be blessed. May the Lord bless you from Zion. May you share the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life and live to see your children's children. May all be well with Israel.
Yeah, another one that seems to talk a lot about children, right? About heritage and you know, that there's a, you know, your legacy is through your family. There's definitely you know, a feeling like there's something here about the importance of continuing on your lineage. There's definitely some themes that we see in this other collection of the Shir Hamalot. One of the things I think that's definitely, well, we don't know for sure, but there is a sense that a lot of people have that as you read this, when you read these kinds of lines of walking, right? The word here is holech b'dirchav, you know, that you walk in the way. That when you see Psalms in this collection that talk about walking, even though again, it's not literally walking the pilgrimage path, you could understand why when somebody would say holech b'dirchav, they don't just mean follow his ways, but literally following on the path to the temple. So that you'll see that in these Psalms. I'll point them out when they're there. But yeah, I mean, some of these Psalms were used as protection for women when they would go into childbirth. Even in Christianity, in the Salisbury rite, this is used as a, I say this in front of Reverend Lynn right now. Reverend Lynn is thankfully with us today. Was sung by the priest after Psalm 121 at the churching of women, which we don't do anymore. Reverend Lynn told us. We definitely don't do it, but it includes thanksgiving for the woman's survival of childbirth and is performed even when the child is stillborn or has died unbaptized. Oh, I didn't know that. There you go. So this is a blessing, which you could also say for adoption, by the way. It says it's not just for birth, but also for adoption. So there you go. Well, you can understand why, because this psalm is definitely about being fruitful. Compared to the fruit of the vine, Geffen, Oriah. Geffen.
Two things.
Yes.
One, there were sayings growing up that stick with me to this day, and you always wonder where they came from. One is the fruit of your labor, right? And you shall prosper. And I think that's interesting. You know, going through this for the last 3 years, various things.
Yeah.
You see where a lot of the
Where those sayings come from.
Sayings, but whatever.
Yeah.
Where they come, I find that very interesting, right? I know it might be, you know, old school for a lot of people listening, but not for me. So every time I see something new, I go, I wonder if that's where it came from.
Yeah.
The second thing is, if you look down at the second to last verse, this had to have been written at a time where things were good.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels that way. It feels that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or there's no battle. Maybe there was wars going on, but things were good.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely has that feeling. Some of them do. Some of them don't, but the ones of the Song of Ascent definitely do. By the way, there's a line here that we do all the time at, well, say we do it all the time, but there's a line here that we sing oftentimes at weddings and bar mitzvahs and celebrations when we're doing a hora. There's a hora song here. Now, everyone knows Hava Nagila and everything like that, but this one's a little more obscure, but it's right here up on line 5 and line 6, the last 2 lines that John said is feeling like good times. There definitely was a feeling that this song gives good times too. Yevarechecha Adonai, and we usually, when the Orthodox folks sing it, it's Yevarechecha Hashem, right? And then we say, Revanim levanecha. Let me play a little bit of it so you can recognize it. I think this is the one.
I recognize you.
Yeah. Oh, wait. This is the bells version. I want to play another one. No, this is not the one. It's Hasidic, but it's not the one I'm. Yeah, but it gives you the sense. What? Yes. Let me see if I can get that one up. I thought that was the one.
It's not coming through
It's
on
not
the,
playing through. I know,
on the
because
Zoom.
yeah, let me. That wasn't the right one. So let me just play this one. I think you'll recognize. Yeah, it's the. I forgot to put this one up because this is actually not the whole psalm. This is just a little bit of it. You know a song I'm singing, right, Judith? Well, we sing it sometimes at Simchat Torah. Yeah. Let me just try to get it up this way. Okay. It came out in 1970. That's how long it was. I was a young guy. Maybe I just have to put Yevarechecha, not that, not the whole Yevarechecha Hashem. Okay, here's the one. Nope. It's another version of it. Okay, here we go. It's too down. That's too down. Let's see. Nope. Well, I'm going to give up in a second because I thought I had, these are all nice versions of Yevarechecha, but it's not the one I'm looking for, which is definitely the upbeat Hasidic one. Nope. This is it, but it's too slow. I'm going to put it up here. Sure. Recognize that now? You recognize that now? Come on, help me out here. Yeah, you recognize that. I'm not going to believe. Okay. All right. So that is Yevarechecha, which is just those last two lines. I got to get this. Stop sharing it right now. There we go. All right. No, still getting some. All right. Still getting sound. I don't know why that is. Just try one thing. There, it's off. And then here we go. Okay. All right. So Psalm 128, not very long, 6 verses. Let's look at Psalm 129. This one is actually a little bit of a throwback to some of the things that we would see before, which is not quite John's point of these are happy. This one is a little bit more of like the personal attacks that we've seen from like the beginning, like towards Psalm 22 and Psalm 23, towards the beginning of Psalms. A lot of those feelings of why am I being attacked? So here we go. This is Shir HaMalot.
Since my youth they have often assailed me, let Israel now declare. Since my youth they have often assailed me, but they have never overcome me. Plowmen plowed across my back. They made long furrows. The Lord, the righteous one, has snapped the cords of the wicked. Let all who hate Zion fall back in disgrace. Let them be like grass on roofs that fades before it can be pulled up, that affords no handful for the reaper, no armful for the gatherer of sheaves, no exchange with passerby. The blessing of the Lord be upon you. We bless you by the name of the Lord.
Yeah. This seems to be, again, one of, we're not going through good times, but we will, again, because I'm not going to get beaten. So this is a fairly well-known psalm, not necessarily because it's sung a lot within the Jewish community. It's used during Sukkot, Shabbat Hagadol, the Shabbat before Passover, but it's not one that we sing a lot. But it's known as the prayer for the downfall of my enemies. So you can imagine that a line like this, that all who hate Zion fall back in disgrace, has been used a lot lately, especially by the people that are more religious in the land of Israel, who again look at this and say, yeah, this is what happens. So, yeah. This doesn't, have anything other than Shir HaMalot, right? So this doesn't have like of David or of Solomon, which most of the Song of Ascents don't. The Song of Ascent that we just read that said of Solomon is unusual. Most of them just simply say Song of Ascent, Shir HaMalot. So we don't know. And again, we know that it's thousands of years old. Is it from the first temple period or from the second temple period? Was it written after the first temple was destroyed? We don't know. We're going to get to a psalm that we know was written after the first temple was destroyed. Maybe not today, but we're going to get real close to it today. And that, of course, is Psalm 137, by the waters of Babylon. When you read that, you know the temple was destroyed. This, we're not sure, but it could be that it was written after the temple was destroyed. But it also could have been written while the temple was being assaulted and by, when the northern kingdom was being destroyed. So, and the southern kingdom was being laid siege to. So we don't know, but it's possible. And people argue over, how do we date this? We don't, because we don't know for sure based on the Hebrew or based on any other. So there is lots of argument over when some of these Psalms were written, but definitely by the Second Temple period. So this one, again, fairly short, but it has more of a sense of not necessarily good times. Again, they're going to come, the bad times are going to come to an end, but this is not a psalm of happiness. Again, a little bit like Psalm 1 that we read in Psalm 126, those who sow in tears. I mean, that's not a good time. Notice, by the way, too, the allusions to the same themes, right? Which are plowing, reaping, right? There's a sense of reaping and sheaves. Lots of allusions, at least, towards agriculture as well, which again seems to be, at least from a point in time when Israel was still very much an agricultural, that was part of their main livelihood, if you will, was being farmers. But again, we bless you, B'Shem Adonai. We bless you in the name of the Lord is something obviously that we say today. So there you go. All right. This next psalm, Psalm 130, we're going to read right now. This psalm is, I would say, well known in Judaism. It's also known in Christianity. It's known by its Latin term, Latin name, Latin opening, De Profundis. De Profundis. From the depths I have cried out to you. Now, that tells you right away by the by the title. It's not, this is also at least partially not from a good place, from a happy place, if you will. But let's take a look. But that line right there, Miha Amakim, or out of the depths, talk about lines, John, that people use for literature or use in reference as an opening for a song or a poem or an allusion. This is one of the big ones. Out of the depths. From the word emek or amek, the word right here is depths. It's also the root for the word for valley, right? Emek means valley, which is why the Jewish day school in the valley is called Emek Academy, right? It means valley, it means valley. So sometimes it has a connotation, it's just a valley. Other times it's not just a valley, right? It's I'm
The pits.
I'm in the I'm in an abyss, exactly. And that's what this seems to start with. So again, that kind of gives it away where it's coming from. But let's take a look at De Profundis.
Out of the depths I call you, O Lord. O Lord, listen to my cry. Let your ears be attentive to my plea for mercy. If you keep account of sins, O Lord, who will survive? Yours is the power to forgive, so that you may be held in awe. I look to the Lord. I look to him. I await his word.
Sorry.
I am more eager for the Lord than watchmen for the morning. Watchmen for the morning. O Israel, wait for the Lord, for with the Lord is steadfast love and great power to redeem. It is he who will redeem Israel from all their iniquities.
Yeah. So it's from the depths, and it's feeling like, again, I'm being punished or I'm at a low point, but hear my cry, God. You'll hear my cry and you'll forgive me. And what's interesting, of course, is that even though this person's speaking from a first person standpoint of I'm calling you out of the depths, which is it's a first person, you can see it's I throughout. It's I called you. But there is definitely a sense here that this is for everybody. This is not, it's not, if you look at the last versions, right? Well, I mean, the last verses, it is, O Israel, wait for the Lord, for with the Lord is steadfast love and great power to redeem. So there are parts of this, I will tell you that the uses for this within Judaism are huge, and there is a tradition to actually. I mean, we don't do this, but there are some synagogues, again, really fairly traditional ones. I think only Orthodox ones, not even conservative synagogues do this, where you actually recite this when you open the Ark for the morning service on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So, so there is a tradition of doing this. Some people also do this at Tashlich. So maybe, but so within the church, this was used all the time, especially the Catholic Church. This is read on Evensong on Ash Wednesday, but I'll play you just part of one of the versions of De Profundis that that has been made into church music. Let me just play one. Here we go.
You use this regularly? No.
Sorry. Share that.
I take it that on a Holy Saturday, the day before Easter.
Oh. Cause I've heard that term, Holy Saturday, I never knew what that meant. Yeah, I do now. I learned something.
Okay, I'm glad. Wait a second, this is not, it's not plain for everybody. Wait a second. But again, this psalm has a sense of forgiveness.
Battery 100%. Connected to CRSHU3.
All right, hold it. For some reason, it wasn't playing for you guys. So you can see that because this, turn this off again. So because the psalm, oh, it's still two. Because the psalm is one of forgiveness and one of yeah, the fact that look, we use it at the high holidays because it has that sense of being forgiven. The Catholic Church to some extent used it as an understanding that when someone had died as part of a requiem mass, that they would be forgiven and that they would be saved. So the feeling or attaching it to that place in life and death became something that I think within the church, that I mean, when I hear Catholics talking about this, it's this idea that to some extent, I mean, we do a similar thing in Judaism when we say Kaddish for somebody. We hope to elevate their soul and hope that they are saved from purgatory or at least not in purgatory for a long time. But this kind of idea that we're going to be forgiven, that we'll be saved, and even. Well, no, there is, but the purgatory is not forever.
I was gonna say, maybe I'm only gonna be there a little while.
Yes, the hope is that we're there for under a year. So the tradition of saying Kaddish for people every day for a year was this understanding that, and you usually actually do it for 11 months, is that nobody needs the full year in in purgatory. But what Kaddish does, according to the Jewish tradition, at least this understanding, is that if you're saying it in honor of somebody, in memory of somebody, you're helping to ease their pain in purgatory as they're being purged of their sins. So to some extent, the Jewish idea of it, which was similar to some of the Christian ideas, was that the parts of us, well, this is a little different, I guess, was that the parts of us that were corrupted, if you will, or that were attached to this world, needed to kind of be burned away, needed to be taken off. So however long that process is, the higher level we could be in this world means the less time we have to spend in purgatory. And the people who are really elevated kind of get a straight ticket to heaven. Most of us need a little bit of time to give up our worldly stuff. So that's the purgatory, if you will. And so out of the depths is sometimes understood as being in the dark place, if you will. And I mean like, yeah, the purgatory place where you have to be for a certain period of time. So that's what we get from, that's where that comes from. But we don't use it for that reason, but it's not like it's that different from some of the things that we do teach about that, however purgatory exists. By the way, there's also a tradition that on Shabbat, even purgatory's fires are off. So Shabbos in the next world, if we're not in the higher place or in the better place, the happy place, the good place, at least on Shabbos, we don't feel it.
What is the name? It's not
Gehenna.
You get a weekend pass?
Not a weekend, it's just Shabbos. You don't have the whole weekend. We don't get Saturday and Sunday off. Just get you're back in on Sunday. It's just the fire stop that day. It doesn't like you get to leave. You just get to kind of feel it's off for that. But it's an interesting idea that in the next world we have to figure out how to give up the stuff that was holding us back. And again, there is a tradition that some people hold in Judaism that if we can't, it's not so much that we go to purgatory, but we have to come back here until we can get it right, which is the basis for Albert Brooks's Defending Your Life, which is that he wants to move on, but that his prosecuting attorney, played by Claire Bloom, basically argues that he hasn't ascended enough in this world yet. He hasn't given up of his fears and his, he was too attached to his fears that he doesn't deserve to move on, which is Albert Brooks's projections on what his weaknesses were. But that's fine. I mean, it's an interesting meditation on the Jewish beliefs of the afterlife, which is that, look, if we do good enough in this world, we get to move on to the next existence. And of course, without ruining it for people, that's what he learns in the not the purgatory stage, but the in-between place, which I guess could be like a purgatory, but it's not. It's more of like the waiting area before they decide where you get sent to. So it's an interesting idea because we do have that idea in Judaism that not necessarily you have to go to purgatory, but you have to come back here to fix those things until you're ready for the next existence. If you couldn't figure that stuff out, you got to come back and do another round. Yeah, that you're reincarnated, but you don't really, your part of you that is your identity isn't here anymore, but your soul part, the soul part of you needs to be elevated and needs to be free of whatever dreck you had, whatever dirt you had, you have to get rid of that. So whatever fears, whatever things that were keeping you from your soul from attaining that the highest level that you could have, which again, the funny thing about it was that, in that movie, Albert Brooks falls in love with Meryl Streep, who is already ascended, she's already pure, she gets to move on and he wants to move on like her, which, is again, something about the redemptive power of love, which even in heaven or pre-heaven, somebody could fall in love and that could help them become a better person, which is again kind of romantic. But anyways, watch Defending Your Life again if you haven't seen it in a while. It's a great movie. To me, it's not only one of his best movies, but it's also just a great meditation on life and what really matters. So Psalm 131 is another one of the songs of ascent, and this one actually says of David. Maybe as we read it, then you'll think about why this was attached to David. Of all the songs of ascents that that we've read, why this one again gets attached to David. Here we go.
O Lord, my heart is not proud, nor my look haughty. I do not aspire to great things or to what is beyond me, but I have taught myself to be contented, like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child am I in my mind. O Israel, wait for the Lord, now and forever.
And that's it. 3 verses. So this this psalm barely gets going, and then it ends, and then it's over. So Psalm 131, it's interesting because there's this idea that David kind of is being very humble here, right? That this is something where does David really feel this? But there's this idea that unlike some of the previous psalms where a person is being chastened, I was going to say this is not somebody who needs to necessarily be chastened, but this is somebody who is comfortable, and it doesn't seem like again this person needs a whole lot. He's comfortable. This also has a similar line that we had in the previous psalm, which is wait for the Lord, right? Wait for the Lord. And this one also is Yachel Yisrael. And you can see it right here. Same phrase. Yachel Yisrael. Wait for the Lord. I don't know if wait's necessarily the best translation. I mean, it conveys this kind of idea of having patience. What does the King James have a different translation? Yeah. I mean, I like that translation of hope. The King James has a little bit better, I think, understanding of like what it really means, which is it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So again, it's a first person intent, if you will, of somebody stating how they feel. But by the end of it, it's not about a first person. It's about for everybody. It's Israel again. So it's another one of those psalms that has kind of a first person feeling to it, but then it doesn't have a first person intent, if you will. So, Cindy just said this sounds a lot like Buddhism. I don't know if lots of Jewish texts sound like Buddhism, but yeah, this one definitely does. This one has a sense of more of a Zen feeling, which is being at peace and not letting your mind be cluttered. But again, there is this interesting kind of like, yeah, this is me talking, but everybody learn from me, if you will. So again, very, very short. It's not, this one's not used for a lot of things, a lot of uses in Judaism. Yeah, it does. Bernstein used it in his Chichester Psalms. He added it to at the very end, the final movement of the Psalms, and he added it with Psalm 133, which we're going to get to in a moment. And that line is very famous. And when Bernstein did it, he knew what he was doing. But yeah, this psalm is, as you can see, so short, but it does have this idea of being content, being at peace. But again, everybody should be.
But it does say the first line, right? The Song of Ascent, period.
Of David. Yeah, well, because it simply says Le David. So then this one is ascribed to David. Just like we had the other one that said a Psalm of Solomon, right? So we have a couple that are that are connected to somebody, but most of them you can see do not have. They simply just say Shir Hamalah. This one, 124 had of David, and I think there's one other. Yeah, 122.
So those are maybe just people around him that were hanging out? No,
We don't know. We don't know when it says of David, but again, you know, most Psalms do have an inscription, and David is the most common of the names. But as far as why this one is of, you know, why one is of David and why one would not be of David, I mean, this one's so short, it's hard to imagine. Now, this one, the next one is an interesting one because this is Shir Hamalot, and then it says, "Oh Lord, remember David," but that's clearly part of the psalm. So this is not a psalm of David, and as a matter of fact, David would never speak of himself in the third person like this. Not just because it's not like remember David. Well, let's take a look. Yeah.
I really want to touch Ascent because I just did a little side research, right? Just typed in a Song of Ascent, right? And so who gets to decide? You've got people saying different things, right?
So that's why I'm going to tell you, I'm only going to tell you what we know. What we know for a fact, said it, and I don't know if you heard it, is we know by the time of the Mishnah, there were the Song of Ascent. The Mishnah talks about the Psalms of Ascent, doesn't say specifically it's these Psalms, but the Psalms are alluded to in other places in the Mishnah so that we know that they knew these Psalms as a collection. Were they exactly these Psalms? We don't know for sure, but most likely. And by the Mishnaic period, there was a set of Psalms that they called Shir Hamalot. We know that. So 2,000 years ago, we know that these Psalms were collected in a bunch. Were they called Psalm 120 to 1? No, they were not called. They were not, those 15 Psalms were not called Psalm 120 to 135. We didn't have numbers for them. But they were a collection and they were used probably during the temple period, but very close to it because the Mishnah was written, part of it was written during the temple period. We know this collection existed. That's the only thing we can say. And again, I'll say we're not 100% sure that these Psalms were all of the Psalms as they existed. And by the way, they may not have been in order like this. The order of this may not have been set, but a collection of Psalms that were like this. And quite frankly, they're also in a special section. There's not in this order, but they're grouped together in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which also leads us to believe that there were Psalms that people said when they went up to the temple. But that's all we can say. I mean, can't say anything else definitively of who organized them, exactly when they were put together, but they were put together during the Second Temple period. This was not done. This was by the time of Jesus, people already knew that. And that's about all we can say. Though I will say that is something. For 2,000 years, people have considered this a grouping.
So that's fine. So the Psalms of David, you can envision was him sitting in a courtyard or someplace.
Somebody commissioning, maybe he commissioned them, maybe he paid for them, maybe he paid for some of them. Look, the Midrash says that he wrote more Psalms than the Psalms that are in the collection, that these are only some of the Psalms that he wrote. He wrote even more. I don't know. Look, I think it's safe to say that David wrote something, and whether they're the Psalms that we have, I don't know. The fact that he commissioned them, whether he paid for them or had a person write them, also is a possibility. But I do believe that well, first of all, we don't know for a fact, and I've said it before, we have no definitive proof that David existed. We don't have a tomb that he's buried in. We don't have a piece of pottery or something that he wrote on that we can say David wrote this. We don't have that. Definitely not Moses, but David, we don't. Though I think most biblical scholars do believe that he existed. That being said, I do believe that he was probably a shepherd at one point in his life. And I do believe that, like some shepherds, he sang. And the fact that he sang and the fact that he had an ability maybe to play the harp, I think is a possibility. And so the fact that he was a king who also played music, I don't think that that's that hard to believe. There were other kings over time who, who had some musical talents. I mean,
Henry VIII.
what? Bill Clinton played the saxophone.
We have
I
some.
didn't say he played it well, but he played it. I mean, he played
I-
better than me.
Am I misremembering? Didn't we find a seal from the house of David or a cornerstone?
We found references to the house of David. Yes, that's right. Those are
Okay.
the earliest references to Beit David, to the house of David, which seems to imply that there was a David for him to have a house. So those
Right.
are from the 800s. Those are not from his day. So we haven't found a house of David seal from the thousands when he lived. So when we find that, then we'll say, hey, look, so we're 150 years away from when he would have lived. We found a very clear reference to the house of David, but that's all we have. So that's all I'm going to tell you. I'm only going to tell you what we know for sure.
So it's not unreasonable then to assume that the songs of ascent were those citizens or people that were going through the mountains.
Going up to the mountain.
Up to the mountain, Jerusalem, and singing these songs of ascent. And these were the ones that were written down. There could have been many others, but these are the ones, whoever wanted to put them on paper.
Yep.
These are the ones that struck them the most.
Yep. I would say that that's what we could say, that while the temple was still standing, that people sang these when they came up to the temple. I mean, look, do we know it for sure? No, because we don't have where they sang them, and we don't have like a place where, hey, this is where they sang Psalm. But the Mishnah was written during that period while the temple was still standing. And it seems pretty clear that from the Dead Sea Scrolls that even they had them, and they were people who didn't go to the temple because they were upset with the corruption of the temple, but maybe they hoped to get back. And they were disaffected priests, we think, who didn't like the way the temple was being run. But they had Psalms of Ascent too. So I think it's pretty safe to say, these are from the temple period. Dead Sea Scrolls? Yeah. Well, definitely would have been different, and we would have been arguing over stuff that people would say, well, we don't have any proof of that. And we said, yeah, we do. We have proof. We have proof now. So you leave it alone. Yes, it's very, very important. It's very important for people to understand, the commonality of Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, and the beginnings of Christianity, all those things. Super important. But, and again, it corroborated what Josephus wrote too, which a lot of people thought Josephus was a liar, and it turns out he wasn't lying. I mean, he lied about some things. I want to say he didn't lie, but yes, and he also, in some cases, flat out lied. But he was also pretty accurate. So you can't say, well, he lied 10% of the time, 90% of the stuff, and a lot of the stuff that he's not lying about, he clearly had no reason to lie about it. He didn't lie. The stuff that he lied about is usually stuff that involved him, and he wanted to make himself look better. But for the most part, he didn't lie. He just reported, and in some cases, again, he embellished, or he said stuff that he clearly couldn't have heard. But
so if anybody wants to know more about the Dead Sea Scrolls, that was it Magnus, I forgot her first name.
yeah, Jody Magnus.
Yeah, Jody, yeah. He knows a lot.
Yeah, there's some good resources to dive into that. But
Get DVDs.
yeah.
Stone it, and it was like a 12-hour type class. It was just wonderful. I learned so much.
Yeah, it's yes, again, to your point, it's very good that we found them, and it's a miracle, and it makes a lot of people, it ended discussions or arguments that people had, and he said, oh, but we now have evidence, so leave it alone, and including even something like the Shir Amala, that it's not just the Mishnah, it's somewhere else that these things existed. All right, so this one's interesting because, again, refers to David, but not David. I mean, look, this is like more proof that David existed. Why would you write this about somebody who didn't exist? What purpose does it have?
Others. Great details.
Yeah. And plus the stuff about David that he allowed to be written about himself shows his humility and some kind of like self-awareness. No one would let that stuff be written about him. Number one, if it wasn't true, because it's too bad. It's too negative. And he let people write it and it got written. You don't make that stuff up about somebody who you're venerating as in a mythological way. He allowed it. I don't know. The whole thing to me, and again, it doesn't make sense that it was invented because the detail is too extreme of a detail to be made up. And why would you make that up? It makes you look terrible. So the fact that he let it be done, that it got kept, and that it's at that level of detail, it just anyway. So you can argue it. I mean, we don't have proof, but why? I mean, you're stretching yourself further to prove that it didn't exist, to me. So. All right, so let's look at this one, which again refers to David as a person who existed.
O Lord, remember in David's favor his extreme self-denial, how he swore to the Lord, vowed to the mighty one of Jacob, I will not enter my house, nor will I mount my bed. I will not give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids until I find a place for the Lord, an abode for the mighty one of Jacob. We heard it was in Ephrath. We came upon it in the region of Yaar. Let us enter his abode, bow at his footstool. Advance, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Your priests are clothed in triumph. Your loyal ones sing for joy. For the sake of your servant David, do not reject your anointed one. The Lord swore to David a firm oath that he will not renounce. One of your own issue I will set upon your throne. If your sons keep my covenant and my decrees that I teach them, then their sons also, to the end of time, shall sit upon your throne. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his seat. This is my resting place for all time. Here I will dwell, for I desire it. I will amply bless its store of food, give its needy their fill of bread. I will clothe its priests in victory. Its loyal ones shall sing for joy. There will I make a horn sprout for David. I have prepared a lamp for my anointed one. I will clothe his enemies in disgrace, while on him his crown shall sparkle.
Yeah, so this psalm, as you can see, gets back to kind of like normal length. You know, this one comes out to you know, you get this sense of David's willingness to kind of commit himself to God and to building the temple. Now, of course, he doesn't get to. Oh, let's go back and look at those notes, a couple of those notes that were here. So you can see that one's just simply language. This, of course, is a reference of, if you look, this is the references to when they found the place for the ark. I mean, the fact that the whole book of Samuel would have to have been invented, I don't want to dwell on the David question anymore, but I mean, again, the details are there. And when you get a reference like this in the Psalms to these stories in a level of detail and a level of reference where clearly everybody knew this story about how David tried to find a place for the temple, and of course wasn't allowed to, that this is this is part of our story. This is part of what everyone knows. Of course, there's also this understanding that David will have a descendant who will always reign. Now, once David's descendants were thrown off the throne during the Babylonian period, for many, many years, there was no king, right? There was no Davidic line. But of course, within Christianity, these lines then become references to Jesus. So this line in particular, this line is quoted in the Acts. The line is in Acts chapter 2, therefore being a prophet and knowing that God had sworn with an oath to him that one of the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, he would raise up Christ to sit upon his throne. Okay. That's that's a line that clearly Christians felt didn't refer to any other king of Judah other than Jesus. So this line down here, I will make a horn sprout for David. I prepared a lamp for my anointed one. In the book of Luke, it says he raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. So Karen La David, the horn of David, becomes an important part of what Jesus would do, which was be the final ruler on the throne of David. So these lines in particular end up becoming much more important to some extent within a Christian context for Jesus than it is even for us. Psalm 132 in Judaism is sung on Shabbat Hagadol, the Shabbat before Passover. And we have a tradition of using these verses right here when we open up the ark. We do a different text in our prayer book, but Kuma Adonai, Limnuchatecha, Atava Aronu Uzecha, advance, O Lord, to your resting place. Uvenu, this is used in some synagogues for when we open the ark. We use a different part. Kuma Adonai ve'afutzu oivecha ve'anusu misanecha mipanecha. So this is a slightly different version of this, which is used in some synagogues for when we open up the ark. So you can see that this is very much about Jerusalem and very much about keeping the throne alive. The
Question.
yeah.
My particular translation, which is Book of Common Prayer translation.
Yep.
It refers to Zion or the throne in the feminine, which I thought was sort of interesting. For the Lord has chosen Zion; He has desired her for His habitation. This shall be the multiple hills forever. Here will I dwell, for I delight in her.
What does King James say?
He hath desired it for his habitation.
Yeah, it's a weird one because both of no, I will say that Reverend Lynn's translation is actually a good translation because God is saying his seat. Moshav lo means his seat. But the Iva, desired it, is her. It could be he desired her for his seat.
Her priest with salvation.
And that is the next line too. Evitiha, which is the same word for ho eshev is the male. I will dwell there. That's the God saying it. But Ivitiha, for I desire her, would the word Iva and Ivitiha are the same word. That's the same root, desire. However you want to translate that, that's fine. But the desire is a feminine form. The thing that's being desired is a feminine form. They translated it here, and then the King James is it. But it is a feminine form. So yeah, I think it's an accurate translation for the word Zion. And Zion is sometimes called Bat Zion, right? A fair Zion, right? The maiden Zion. So calling the place a feminine is consistent, I think. So yes, Jerusalem could definitely be there seen as a man. And I will also say here, to clothe her priests in victory. Yeah.
When you're ready to move on.
Yeah.
Back to the horn scrub.
Yes.
I don't understand. You go up 4 more paragraphs, right? It's clearly stated, right? The Lord swore to David a firm oath that the Lord will not renounce one of your own issue, right?
Mhm.
So in legal terms, issue is children.
Yep.
Right? It is
Yep.
lineage.
Yep.
It's interesting. Another term that I never understood in law school, where it came from. Now I kind of understand.
So
But
your point is that this means a child.
lineage, female, male, they want it to be a boy, right? Obviously, it says
Yes.
sons, right? But at the end of the day, if there's no sons, maybe to her. My point is, I don't understand. Let's say it's a large jump, right, for me reading this, for someone of another faith to start grabbing lines out of this.
Yeah, but I know, but the rabbis did it too. So the fact that the church, the early Christians did it, they were doing consistently what we did, which was doing midrash. So the fact that they said that Jesus is that descendant rather than your understanding of it in the literal terms, which is, no, this is like your descendant and then his descendant and then his descendant, which is why, you have the Da Vinci Code people who are running around saying that Jesus had kids. He had to have kids. But clearly, by the time the Christians were saying that Jesus was this descendant, folks, there hadn't been a king of Judah for 500 years by that point. So the fact that they said that that was Jesus isn't so crazy, given the fact that at some point, what Jew was actually thinking that a descendant of David was going to be there? Clearly, some people did, but the Christians picked up on it, and they were able to.
But there were descendants. There had to have been.
Okay, but John, for 500 years, no one had made a king of David a descendant. For the 500 years since the destruction of the temple, nobody said, "Hey, let's make a king. Let's make one of David's descendants." You're right. There were a lot of people that were descendants of David. We talked about it. The exilarchs, the Jews that ruled out of Babylonia during the Persian period, believed that they were descendants of David. We're all descendants of David. But the point is that nobody for 500 years decided to put a guy on the throne of Judah, of Israel, whatever was the reconstituted commonwealth during the time of the Second Temple. Nobody ever got on the throne and said, "I'm David's descendant and I'm going to rule." They never restored it. So the fact that by Jesus's time, that he said, well, he's a descendant of David. Look, that's why the book of Matthew traces Jesus's lineage back to David. They have to. They have to have that, because for the Jews who said, well, is he a descendant of David? Literally, for the people who said, come on, is he a descendant of David? They said, yeah, he is. There's
no facts to support that.
Okay, but that's why it's there. The reason why it's there is because people wanted, those were now the facts. The lineage that he has in the book of Matthew is for that purpose. It's for that purpose, so that a Jew who would read it would go, oh yeah, I guess he's a descendant of David. So he's legitimate. The fact that he didn't have any other kids, from the Jewish standpoint, at that point, then you're right. Then it's a dead issue, because what he's the last king and the only king, that's where some Jews would have had a problem, which is why Jews who would have attached themselves to Jesus, including Jesus' own family, might have said after a few generations, this isn't what this means. But by that point, there are enough Gentile Christians to say, I don't care about David. I don't care about his lineage. I don't care about this. We don't need a Jewish king. We're not Jewish. What do I care about a Jewish king for? What do I care about Jerusalem? I don't care about Jerusalem. I don't need Jerusalem. And so then it became a moot point. The interesting thing is, and we don't know this because they disappeared, but we have little hints about it. Did Jesus's family think, did his brothers, did his nephews think that they were going to be the Messiah? That's what we don't know. And that I can't know that they were going to be the Messiah once he was gone. Did they think, were there Jews who were part of that Jesus movement who literally thought, correct? Were there people who said, we're part of this family and we're part of, whether Jesus had a kid or not, we're part of the same family? So, right, if your uncle is the king, you might still be able to be king. If your uncle didn't have a kid, correct. If your uncle didn't have a son, I get to be, look, I don't remember all the War of the Roses businesses, but there were a bunch of nephews, Richard III and this guy, they were all trying to be king. But some of them were nephews, some of them were cousins. So the fact is that would Jesus's family, would some of them have been fighting for that? We don't know. That's what we don't know, because we don't have their stuff. But we do know that there seems to have been a group of Christians, Jewish Christians or Jewish followers of Jesus, or people who are attached to the movement, whatever you want to call it, who did not think that let me put it in a positive. They thought they were supposed to be in power. They did not think that anybody but them were leading this group. Correct. And they probably believed it. We don't know that for sure. We only have what the other side said about him. We only know what Paul and the rest of the people who ended up creating what became Christianity, what they thought about those people, which is they didn't think much of them. They didn't think that these people got it. And maybe they didn't. Paul, to some extent, was right. I mean, his form of Christianity won, which was, it's not about a Jewish king. It's not about a Jewish lineage. It's not about Jerusalem. This is much bigger. And so Paul, as an adherent to this, got it. Maybe he understood this is not what we're talking about anymore. Or again, maybe Jesus told him, or maybe he had the foresight to realize that he had picked up something that was potentially much bigger than, look, I'm going to use a horrible analogy, but it's one that we've seen and they've made movies of it, and it happened in our lifetime. Ray Kroc didn't start McDonald's. He didn't. There already was a McDonald's, right? He bought it from those guys.
That's another story.
And that's, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what you got to keep in mind, that we don't know the real McDonald's story of how Christianity started, because we only get one side of it, and they were not interested in, and they didn't have to. The winners don't have to keep the loser's side. You don't have to tell their side of the story. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, it probably did. And so the reference to the horn here, but interestingly, the word that they use here, which is the tzemach, Karen, sometimes it's a combination of two images, right? Two images that we have a lot. The Karen David is the horn of David, or the horn of the altar, the horn of power. And then we also have a tzemach, which is the branch, the sprout. And we have tzemach all the time. We have the branch, I'm going to say it, the branch Davidians. Where the branch Davidians were the tzemach David. They were the branch of David. But sometimes, but it is sometimes tzemach Yishai, but it's tzemach David. Here we have a tzemach Karen David. So we have two images. We have the tzemach, which is the branch, the sprout, and here is the Karen. So what's interesting is they have that's why they translate it as I will make a horn sprout for David, which is the horn itself is a sprout, is the branch, which of course isn't just a branch, it's a horn of power. So it's not just a branch, it's not a branch of a tree, it's a strong horn of power. And so obviously
So is this where he got his?
a branch Davidian. This isn't the only place we have a Tzemach David. We use the phrase Tzemach David all the time in Judaism. Tzemach David means a branch of David. It means another, a line of David. But again, back to Christians. Did Christians feel that they were a branch of David, and how seriously do they take that? Obviously David Koresh thought he was going to be creating another line of he thought of himself as a Messiah, as a branch of David. Yeah, so that's when people take the Bible and go off in their directions. But yeah, both images are here, Tzemach and Karen, which is not common. Usually one or the other is used, and usually it's the Tzemach. And again, the word Mashiach is here, right here. Meshichi, my anointed one, my Messiah. So all of that is there, and that's why, again, it takes a lot of Christologic tone. Now, yes, okay.
Solomon came after David.
What?
Solomon.
Yeah.
For 500 years.
We don't talk about any other king other than the guy who started the line, which is David, right? So yeah, it's true Solomon came next, but we're not talking about necessarily Solomon, because Solomon is the next. We're not the branch of Solomon, we're the branch of David, the guy who started the dynasty. This is the dynasty. This is the dynasty of David. And that's what we call it. I mean, like we still call, when somebody refers to a dynasty, they talk about the first leader of that dynasty. When Charlemagne started the dynasty, it's the Carolingian dynasty. It's not his next son or the other son. It goes back to Charlemagne. So you go back to the founder, and that's the guy who gets the name. The name of that, and sometimes they add a name to it, like the Windsor Mountbatten line. It was Windsor, and then they added the Mountbattens to it. The Battenberg dynasty, actually, they anglicized it to Mountbatten instead of Battenberg. But anyways, now let's read the psalm that you all know. You all know this psalm. You all know the first line really well. But this is a Shir HaMa'alot, and it's also Le David. But we know it from the next line, which is actually the line that we sing all the time.
How good and how pleasant it is that brothers dwell together. It is like fine oil on the head running down onto the beard of Aaron that comes down over the collar of his robe, like the dew of Hermon that falls upon the mountains of Zion. There the Lord ordained blessing, everlasting life.
Yeah. Now that's 3 lines, not very long. The last part of it, the last 2 lines of it, very weird. Because if you think about what's really going on there, it's nice, and it's a nice, happy vision of people feeling contentment again, which we saw a couple Psalms ago, feeling like a weaned child. This is a feeling like you have oil dripping down your beard, which I guess is a good feeling, right? It's like feeling good. I'm feeling like, I know Mike is feeling like, I don't want oil dripping down my beard. It does not feel like like something I'm wanting to do. But yeah, having the oil fall down on your beard is like, it's contentment. It means that you're enjoying life. I don't know, sitting back having a cold one. I don't know.
They're talking about the ceremony of being anointed, aren't they?
Correct. Correct. No, it is.
So it's saying that
When you became a
that this friendship
No
is
oil.
like
We don't use oil.
the best, the highest in society that you can achieve.
Okay, but it's a feeling, right? Because they're
Right.
not talking about necessarily, right, being the priest.
No,
But
they're not.
they're talking-
I didn't mean they're saying that you're the priest, but they're saying that this is as good for you as if you were elevated to the priesthood. It's
Correct.
good as that to have friends.
Correct. And like the dew of Hermon that falls on the
Mhm.
mountains of Zion, this beautiful life-giving water that is wonderful. Again, they're not necessarily, what I'm saying is it's not necessarily imagery that we can get, but the point of it is the last two lines are saying what a great feeling it is. And what is it that we're feeling? How good it is for us to be together. So that's the part we sing. We don't sing the rest of it because it's just weird. It's kind of weird. Like, what are you singing about? I'm singing about oil dripping down my beard. So nobody sings that part. They sing Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. They sing Psalm 133. And again, it's not a very long psalm, so it's not like they couldn't have done a musical version of the whole psalm. I guess my point is, we only do one line of this. And there are other psalms where we only do one line or one verse or a couple of words. But what I'm saying is that if we put the rest of it to song, you'd be like, why are you singing about that? Maybe the last line is kind of beautiful because it's about, the beauty of nature. But yes, this very special ceremony of a priest being anointed and feeling great, feeling phenomenal at the highest that you're being chosen to be the priest and that you're celebrating this, or whenever this rededication of when a priest would have oil put on his beard, that he was feeling really, really good. It seems like a very specialized feeling that, again, we can all maybe, oh, you know what I mean, like this. And I'd be like, yeah, but usually if you're going to talk about something that we all enjoy, make it something that I can actually relate to. But okay, the point is that it also is just weird, oil dripping down a guy's beard. But I think that when we think about why we use this and how we use this, obviously we sing this at the beginning of a lot of times when we gather for prayer, whether we're in synagogue or whether we're having an event together. We use Hine ma tovu manayim all the time. And what's so beautiful about it, again, is that this is supposed to be a great feeling, how good it is for us to be together. And yeah. The metaphors are there, and they're to help us understand this line. So yes, it's all important. It's all good to understand, but really look at how great that line is, how good it is for us to be together. What did they say?
Yes.
Yeah. So the phrase gam yachad, they translate just simply as together. And that's why in a lot of translations, it is how good it is for us to be together, for brothers to be together, for people to be together as one, right? Because the word yachad means unity or one, right? The word yachad is the word echad, to be together as one. So obviously it's more than one person, it's a group of people. And again, the word achim literally means brothers. It does mean brothers. But clearly it doesn't have to literally be just your siblings. But this understanding, again, that sometimes siblings don't get along that well, is enhanced by the fact of many stories in the Bible, that it is a beautiful thing when we can be together as one and with one purpose. And so we have so many different versions of this. I'm going to play you obviously a few different Hine ma tovs, but think about how important it is. And again, I know churches use this all the time. And so when I am at a church event or a ecumenical event, I'll oftentimes say, how good it is for us to be together, and And I'll say, from Psalm 133. But a lot of people know this. I'm going to play you one that you don't know to start with, which is Abu Yudaya. This is African, the
laba bwekulya okulungi bwekusanyusa abooluganda okutula inematovu umanayimu shebeti achim gam yahadu inematovu.
So those are the Abu Yudaya of Uganda, who do it very much in a Christian gospel, African gospel sound. Listen to this one. This one's from B'nai Jeshurun on the Upper West Side. And what I loved about this one is it's very Middle Eastern. This builds up in speed. B'nai Jeshurun. Yeah. So let me get that off. It's still, yeah, I don't know why it's still doing that. Anyways, yeah, it's super powerful. So that is, I've seen that done live. It's very similar to a Sufi dhikr with a way the Islamic prayers that will build in like that. And so the Sufis oftentimes will dance and, you know, they're known as the whirling dervishes, at least in Turkey, right? And they'll literally dance. I mean, you'll dance around to this and you'll eventually kind of, well, you'll get dizzy, but you'll also get elevated. I don't know if it's your brain or your whatever, your spirit, but it's a very powerful experience. So that is what I like about that is it feels like maybe that's the way, kind of closer to the way maybe it was originally sung. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's also a really nice thing when we get back to a point where Jews and Muslims will hopefully be praying together again, that's the kind of thing that you could do conceivably. So this is something that, you know, when you think about how we're praying and how we're elevating ourselves, just the fact that we're together, bringing people together, that this is something that I think, I'm hoping that,
prayer that we do in Shabbat.
yeah. So welcoming people together with those ideas, with that belief that we're coming together, that we can come together. I mean, think about that. Thousands of years ago, somebody wrote those words. You know, somebody wrote how good it is for us to be together in unity. I mean, look, you can't get much more powerful than that kind of hope that people will.
Obviously, this disunity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we know it from the Bible. And when people say, oh, it says brothers, is it really? Cain and Abel killed them. Don't tell me that brothers get along. The understanding is they don't. And this is what we aspire to. We're trying to bring people together. Look, at the highest level, that's what religion should be doing. It should be bringing people together. It should be making people feel like there's commonality. I mean, that's what the religions aspire to, is a sense of people being at peace and not killing each other. Now, don't know that we'll get to it today, but some of the Psalms sound like they're pretty happy, and they wind up being like, did they just say that? So yeah, obviously we have parts of the Bible that are not friendly, but this, you know, a line like this really is, I mean, this is the stuff that we aspire to. Again, the rest of the Psalm maybe isn't as relevant or as it makes us understand it as much, but think about what that means, how good it is for us to be together. So a lot of people there's so many different versions. I didn't play enough of them, but those are all really, really good versions of that idea, which is bringing people together. And again, I always love bringing sounds in together that are not necessarily the traditional sounds that we always think of, to bring in other sounds. So Wendy's written a melody for Hine Matov. A lot of people have written melodies for Hine Matov. I think everyone kind of aspires to write a melody that makes people feel like that. What? We had a Beatles version of Hine Matov. I don't remember which one we did, but yeah. But again, the word Hine at the beginning of something mean how good or behold. Look, the next one, Psalm 134, also has a Hine at the beginning. It's just not very well known for a lot of reasons. So what do you think? When you think about Hine Matov, everyone knows this one, knows that. When you get to the next Psalm, you get to Psalm 134, not necessarily as well known. Oh, I just wanted to say, in Christianity, in some of the uses, do you use it at all, Hine Matov, Reverend Lynn, over the years?
Sure.
Yeah?
Probably not in Hebrew, though.
Probably in Greek.
So in Latin, it's known as ecce quam bonum.
All of our psalms in the prayer book have Latin names.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So if you think about again,
The exclamation mark.
So you're proficient in Latin then, Reverend?
First language of the church is always Greek,
Okay.
and then Hebrew, and then Latin for us.
Interesting.
Now, this Psalm 134 is, as I said, also has a behold, though it doesn't translate it as, or as a hine, necessarily you'd see it, because here it just says now. What does the King James say? Yeah, that's kind of better translation. You know, like if you're, however you're going to say, well, they don't even translate hine there. It's just how good. But there's a hine here too. All right, but this one, well, this one gets known by kind of the beginning of this. Here we go.
Now bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord, who stand nightly in the house of the Lord. Lift your hands toward the sanctuary and bless the Lord. May the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion.
Yeah, 3 verses. But again, because this one says right at the beginning, all the servants of the Lord who stand nightly in the house of the Lord, there's this sense of, again, this is a nighttime one, right? This is a psalm that we would be saying at night. Again, not very long, but again, sometimes this was used in night prayers, like, for example, Slichot, that verse 1 and 2 are part of the Slichot prayers that we do on the Shabbat evening before Rosh Hashanah. So yeah, people would attach it to the evening. And within the Catholic Church, this is part of the daily evening prayers for some of the monasteries. And there you go. So yes, Compline. Yes, I did not mention that, but yes, it's for the Catholics and for Anglican Church. It's part of the Compline. Which do you guys do something for? Is there a Compline that's? I mean, I guess it's like it's your evening service. Yeah, it's the evening service, what we call the Mariv service, the evening service. So I'm guessing that's not like a very common service.
Practiced mostly by individuals.
Mostly by individuals, Reverend Lynn said. So
Sometimes churches do it.
right. So for us, it's an interesting thing in Judaism that, like for us, especially for us, our big service that we do is Friday evening, right? Is a Mariv service, is an evening service. So that's a little different because if you think about it, most churches are doing morning services, and we're doing an evening service as our focal point. But again, it's because to some extent, the priests started their evening rituals that for the day started in the evening. So that's kind of why it kicked off like that. But of course, there's this understanding that, you know, this is a special time to pray in the evening. So that's a very short one. But let's take a look at Psalm 135, which again, this is I would say less common, less well known than the other psalms around it, or definitely 133, and then the next one 136. But this is used occasionally in within, not so much within Christianity doesn't use it so much, but that a few lines of this are used for during the holidays, during Sukkot, during Hoshana Rabbah, and towards the end of Passover too. But let's take a look at Psalm 135. Again, this one, interestingly, again, as we move out of Shir HaMa'alot, this one is actually now the first one we're doing that's not a Shir HaMa'alot. Though I will say that there definitely are psalms, there's definitely similarities to this with the other psalms that just came before. So technically, this is not Psalm of Ascent. Psalm 134 is the last Psalm of Ascent. That's the last one. But Hallelujah. We have, I think we have once, but it's not, it comes up a lot. I mentioned, I think when we had it, it was maybe like Psalm 120. No, I don't remember. But now we're going to start. Now we're going to start seeing it. Now we're going to start. Yeah, Psalm 150 is known as Hallelujah. Yes, but this is the end. I mean, this is now, we're not in Psalm of Ascents anymore, but we're going to read this and the next Psalm 136 today. So here's Psalm 135. This one is a little bit longer, and it has, well, you'll see, it has some interesting allusions, but this definitely has the hallelujah that we'll start seeing in the last part of it. And not just once, right? Not just like Mike was just saying, hallelujah, Psalm 130, Psalm 150 says it over and over and over again. But you'll start to see that as a refrain. It's not just hallelujah. This will be a refrain in the psalm. Here we go.
Hallelujah. Praise the name of the Lord. Give praise, you servants of the Lord, who stand in the house of the Lord, in the courts of the house of our God. Praise the Lord, for the Lord is good. Sing hymns to his name, for it is pleasant. For the Lord has chosen Jacob for himself, Israel as his treasured possession. For I know that the Lord is great, that our Lord is greater than all gods. Whatever the Lord desires, he does in heaven and earth, in the seas and all the depths. He makes clouds rise from the end of the earth. He makes lightning for the rain. He releases the wind from his vaults. He struck down the firstborn of Egypt, man and beast alike. He sent signs and portents against Egypt, against Pharaoh and all his servants. He struck down many nations and slew numerous kings. Sihon, king of the Amorites, Og, king of Bashan, and all the royalty of Canaan, and gave their lands as a heritage to his people, Israel. O Lord, your name endures forever, your fame, O Lord, through all generations. For the Lord will champion his people and obtain satisfaction for his servants. The idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but cannot speak. They have eyes, but cannot see. They have ears, but cannot hear, nor is there breath in their mouths. Those who fashion them, all who trust in them, shall become like them. O house of Israel, bless the Lord. O house of Aaron, bless the Lord. O house of Levi, bless the Lord. You who fear the Lord, bless the Lord. Blessed is the Lord from Zion, he who dwells in Jerusalem. Hallelujah.
Yep.
Psalm.
Yep. And so, again, this real dig at idolatry, which is that it's silly, and the people who pray to them are going to wind up like them, which are, they can't do any of this stuff. They can't talk. They can't, we have this fourfold thing that we talked about that we saw in the other Tehillim, in the 114s and the 115s and the Psalms that we call Hallel, is this, check this out, right? This distinction amongst the community, right? Israel, Beit Yisrael, the house of Israel. Then we have the house of Aaron, the Kohanim. And then we have the house of the Levites, which Mike just left, but he likes to make sure the Levites, his tribe, are covered, and they are. And then there's the fourth. Now, they're not called a house. The other ones are all houses. Beit Yisrael, Beit Acharon, Beit Levi. Those are houses. Those are tribes. Those are peoples. The last one is Yirei Adonai, those who fear the Lord. Now, we've talked about this before, which is that there are those who believe that this referred to people who are not necessarily Jewish. Yeah, these are people who were part of the family, but not officially part of the family. And they're a kind of a fourth category. Now, some people say, well, it's just a poetic way of tying it all up. But yet, why does it call them those who fear God? We call those people God-fearers. I mean, that's what they ended up being called. In Greek, they were called God-fear. I mean, these were people that many people think the early church appealed to those people, these God-fearers, these people who hadn't made a formal conversion to Judaism, but were people who were already attaching to synagogues and had been members of synagogues and who had donated to synagogues and who are going to synagogues. So, are these people who were already, something that predates converts and kind of was a separate thing. And so again, we know that these people, went to synagogue and were mentioned in the Christian Bible as a separate group. So, again, these are, some scholars feel that the God-fearers named in the New Testament, but there are people who believe that these were kind of Jewish people. It says right here in the Hebrew Bible, there is some recognition of Gentile monotheistic worship, right? Psalm 115 is one of those, but the one we just read also has that same line. Here's the line in Psalm 115, Yireh Adonai. There's Beit Aharon, right? It says Israel, Beit Aharon, and then it says Yireh Adonai. That's Psalm 115. But as I was saying, Mike, you were not here, but I said that that this is also in Psalm 135, this idea that Israel, Aaron, Levi, the house of the Levim, and God-fearers are all blessing God. This idea again of Jerusalem, just what we were reading in the Song of Ascent. So even though we're not technically in the Song of Ascent anymore, it's definitely some very similar themes. It doesn't seem like necessarily, other than we're not a Song of Ascent. This one doesn't seem that different than the ones we just read. There isn't anything in here where we would just say, no, this couldn't be part of the other ones. Though again, the other ones didn't say hallelujah, but we have that same phrase, ki naim, not the only time we have the word pleasant, but how pleasant, how nice, same word that we just had in Psalm 133, how pleasant this is. These are words that we have. Now, what this psalm does have from verse 4 through verse 12 is a bunch of historical references to all stuff that we've read about in the Bible, specifically the plagues in Egypt, and then what happened to us when we came out of Egypt as we're going towards the promised land in the book of Numbers. Now, we have this mentioned in the book of Numbers, and it's mentioned again in Deuteronomy, the wars against Sihon and Og. Look, we don't know much about this, but in the biblical period, these were really big wars. These were wars that the Israelites looked at as proof that God was with them. So much so that they're juxtaposed with the plagues that happened in Egypt. It doesn't say here anything about the Red Sea. I mean, you could say it's referenced by this, but it doesn't say it. It says it's signs and portents, the stuff that was done. Is that the Red Sea? Maybe, but it doesn't say it. But yet the war against Sihon and Og in the desert is. And so these are not the only times that this is mentioned in the Bible. These were important victories that the Israelites talked about in the book of Numbers. We don't fully understand why these were so big, other than maybe these were really big kings. They were very powerful kings. And the fact that we destroyed them was another proof of God's power. But these are historical references. And so whenever we have historical references in other parts of the Bible, we have to step back and say, hey, it's there. The Bible is referenced in other parts of the Bible. It is. It is. So what does it tell us is that whenever we see that, we got to take a step back and say, okay, why is it here? What does it tell us? And again, some of it we can speculate. Some of it, is the job of biblical scholars to say, well, I believe that this is why it's here. But we know for sure is that the people of during this period referenced it because they thought it was very important. That's for sure. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. I mean, that's obvious. It was important, and that's why it's there.
The different houses.
Yes.
I think Aaron,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
those very
Yes, you weren't here. You went to the bathroom. I said it. You got mentioned. I said you'd be very happy that you got mentioned. So yes, but Beit Aharon we have. We had it in Psalm 115. What we didn't have in Psalm 115 was, and you pointed out, was that it didn't mention the Levites. It only mentioned the three. But we have other places where it refers to all four. And so this is one of those places where it talks about that. So
By then, we had lost many of the tribes.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, we really we really don't have time for 136 now. And this is actually not a bad place to break. Psalm 136 is really famous. It's called the Great Hallel. We actually do it at Passover. We go through Psalm 136. It talks about how great God's love is. We say over and over again, Ki le'olam chasdo. This is the Ki le'olam chasdo. Ki le'olam chasdo. God loves us. God gives us food. God takes care of us. God does all these wonderful things for us. And of course, God also is striking down the firstborn. He's also hurling Pharaoh and his army into the Sea of Reeds. It's hard. He slew many mighty kings. It's hard as we read this to talk about God's mighty love, beautiful love for us, as we're talking about this horrible destruction that he brings on other people. Yes, we use but we'll get to it next week. Oh, excuse me. We do not have class next week. I am back in Nashville, and I want to tell everybody, I thought about not having class today because it was going to break, but there's no more traveling. I'm not going to be traveling anymore between now and this end of December. So we do not have class next week. I am in Nashville for Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we won't. We are going to, unless people say we don't, on the following Wednesday, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We will. We'll ask. We'll poll people this Wednesday how many people can do Wednesday night. But we are going to be here the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Before Thanksgiving. Yeah, you will be whatever. If you're not here, you'll be getting healthy. So, but anyways, we're going to read Ki le'olam chasdo. We're going to read Psalm 136, and then next week we're also going to read one of the most popular Psalms, 137, because there's so many beautiful versions of Al Naharot Bavel, by the waters of Babylon. There was a big one that came out in the 60s, right? There's a lot of versions of this. It's a beautiful psalm. It's got the hope of never forgetting Jerusalem, clearly written by people who witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem. We've got to remember Jerusalem. We've got to be happy. And then, of course, it ends with this beautiful line, which is,
God isn't a national God.
correct. God is going to be universal, but Babylon, you're going to get paid back, because everyone loves the way that the psalm kind of comforts people who have survived, right? They've survived destruction, right? It's a beautiful psalm. And then, of course, it ends with, let everybody who's treated us poorly, let their babies be dashed on the rocks. Everyone forgets that part of Psalm 137. but it is there. And of course, it's a horrible vision, but it's one of God essentially doing back to the people who did it to us. It's a terrible, it's one of the more, I always find it interesting. And again, we'll look at it in a couple of weeks. It's one of the most famous Psalms, but it ends with one of the most brutal visions or images that you could possibly use in a prayer. But we usually don't sing that part. We don't sing that part, but we do definitely sing this part. If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right arm wither, let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. If I do not, if I do not think about Jerusalem, even in my happiest hour, if I don't think about it, which, by the way, is a downer. Thinking about the destruction of Jerusalem at your happiest time is a downer, other than, again, the fact that you're hoping that it will be rebuilt, and I guess that your enemies' babies will be dashed on the rocks. We'll be done with Psalms before the end of the year. But yeah, we're getting to the home stretch. We're in the last 20 Psalms or 15 Psalms. All right, everybody, stay healthy, stay positive, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, be good. Go Dodgers. It's over, man. There's nothing more you can do. Bye. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.